come back stronger than ever before. And that means supporting our local communities. My friends, our municipalities have been hit hard by COVID-19. They have been on the front lines. The financial impact has been massive. They needed our help, and we promised we'd be there. So today, I'm here to announce that we are providing up to $4 billion through the Safe Restart Agreement to Ontario municipalities. Ontario will be there for our municipal partners and our communities. That's $4 billion to ensure Ontario municipalities can keep delivering critical services that people rely on every day. That's $4 billion to support homeless shelters, women's shelters, food banks, public health, and transit. I made a commitment that I would fight for the municipalities, I would fight for transit systems, and I would fight for every Ontarian. So when we went to the federal table, along with my fellow premiers, I did just that. I fought for transit, I fought for municipalities, and in a show of unity, the federal government stepped up to the plate. We secured billions of dollars for transit under this agreement. For Ontario, that represents up to $2 billion. Up to $2 billion to keep our transit systems running. I want to thank Premier Moe for his leadership around the Premier's table. I also want to thank Minister Mulroney, Minister Phillips, and Minister Clark for working behind the scenes with their federal counterparts. And most important of all, throughout these negotiations, our municipal partners had our backs. I want to thank all 444 mayors across Ontario for their incredible support in getting this deal done. Because we stood united as a province, because we stuck together, because Ontario municipal leaders stood behind us. Ontario was in the strongest position possible during these negotiations. I want to recognize Mayor Tory in particular for his support. My friends, we stuck together as Team Ontario, and Canada's Premier stuck together as Team Canada. And together, we got an incredible deal. We showed that there's nothing we can't accomplish when we work together. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll pass it over to Minister Phillips.
Thank you, Premier. Premier Ford's commitment to securing a good deal for Ontario while demonstrating unprecedented collaboration between levels of government has led to an important victory for the people of Ontario. From the start of negotiations, Ontario advocated that municipalities be supported as part of the Safe Restart Agreement. This agreement provides municipalities and transit systems up to $4 billion to relieve pressures they are facing. This is important because Ontario municipalities have indicated they are dealing with a $4 billion shortfall as a result of COVID-19. More expenses, including on public health and vital personal protective equipment, and decreased revenue caused by many factors including a global economic downturn and lower transit ridership, have created this significant pressure for communities. In our many conversations, municipalities have told us that without relief, people could experience cuts to services and higher taxes. That is why, under Premier Ford's leadership, Ontario was a strong advocate at the federal-provincial negotiating table to ensure municipalities and transit systems were supported as part of the Safe Restart Agreement. As a result, up to $2 billion will be available to relieve municipal operating pressures, $777 million from the federal government, with $1.2 billion from the province. And $2 billion will be available to address shortfalls in transit systems, with $1 billion from both the federal government and Ontario. This is a historic level of support that's being provided during unprecedented times. As we look at how the pandemic is unfolding around the globe, we know that much uncertainty remains. And because of that uncertainty, this investment comes at a critical time. Now I'll turn it over to Minister Clark for additional details.
Thank you, Minister Phillips. And I want to thank the Premier for being a champion for every single Ontario community throughout negotiations with the federal government. I'm proud to work alongside someone who understands the needs of Ontario municipalities and who led the charge, fighting hard to ensure their needs were understood. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities said that at least $10 billion in emergency operating funding was needed nationwide. Ontario's portion would be $4 billion, and that's exactly the deal that was struck. The Premier fought hard to get Ontario's fair share, a deal with funding and flexibility needed to get Ontario back on track. We look forward to engaging with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the City of Toronto on this in the coming days and weeks. I'm so grateful for everything our municipal leaders and local staff have done to see us through the COVID-19 outbreak. We've been working in partnership with all municipalities all along to ensure that they have the tools they needed to respond throughout the emergency and to get back on the road to recovery. And they've done a great job of keeping people safe and charting a path forward to a stronger, brighter future for their residents. Since March, we have announced nearly $350 million in social service relief funding. Most of it helps municipalities expand housing and homelessness supports for our province's most vulnerable and helps build longer-term, more sustainable solutions. As we move forward with reopening the province, municipalities will be a key partner in our economic recovery. We are also helping municipalities bounce back from the impacts of the outbreak through the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act, our government's plan to get the province back on track. The Act made changes to give municipalities the flexibility and tools they need now and in the future. Working together, I know our municipal partners will emerge stronger than before and able to lead economic recovery efforts all across Ontario. And the funding announced today will play a critical role in that. Thank you, and I'll now pass it over to Minister Mulroney.
Thank you, Minister Clark. Hello, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. I'm pleased to be part of today's historic deal. This is great news for our country, our province, and all of Ontario's municipalities. Je suis heureuse de participer à l'accord historique d'aujourd'hui. C'est une excellente nouvelle pour notre pays, notre province, et toutes les municipalités de l'Ontario. The COVID-19 outbreak has put tremendous financial strain on public transit systems, with some experiencing approximately 90% fewer riders, while facing added costs for cleaning and protective measures. But despite these pressures, transit operators across Ontario have continued to provide a high level of service for the people of our province. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, I have been in constant communication with our municipal transit partners and stakeholders to find solutions to the challenges created by COVID-19. And I can tell you that our government is committed to finding solutions. Ensuring safe and reliable transit is key to Ontario's economic restart. And that is why half of the funding being announced today will support our critical municipal transit systems. That's funding of up to $2 billion dedicated for transit, $1 billion from the federal government, and a matching $1 billion from our government. C'est pourquoi la moitié du financement annoncé aujourd'hui soutiendra nos systèmes municipaux essentiels de transport en commun. Il s'agit d'un financement pouvant atteindre 2 milliards de dollars consacrés au transport en commun, 1 milliard de dollars du gouvernement fédéral et 1 milliard de dollars du gouvernement de l'Ontario. I'd like to thank my fellow ministers of transportation from across the country who stood alongside Ontario to advocate to the federal government about the need for designated transit dollars to help us safely restart our economy. This deal is the result of the provinces standing together to listen to municipalities and represent their concerns to ensure recovery for everyone. J'aimerais remercier mes collègues ministres des Transports de tout le pays qui se sont joints à l'Ontario pour faire valoir auprès du gouvernement fédéral la nécessité de consacrer des fonds pour le transport en commun afin de nous aider à relancer notre économie en toute sécurité. Cet accord est le résultat d'une collaboration entre les provinces qui ont écouté les municipalités et ont fait part de leurs préoccupations afin d'assurer la reprise économique pour tous. Together, we will emerge from COVID-19 stronger than ever. Merci. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the phone line for questions. Just a reminder, one question, one follow-up. First question, please.
First question comes from Randy Rath from Stage TV. Please go ahead.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Premier. I'm wondering, how do municipalities go about accessing this money? Is there an application process, and how quickly can you see these funds being moved?
Well, I'll pass this over to Municipal Affairs Minister. We're going to be rolling that out over the next few weeks. We'll be in communication with them. We have to wait until the federal government starts flowing the money, but I'll pass over to the Minister. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Randy, for the question. As the Premier said, we will be rolling out the dollars in the coming weeks. We're just working on program finalization. Some of the dollars, as I mentioned probably about 2 weeks ago, as part of the Safe Restart Agreement, some of the social service dollars will be application-based, but some of the other dollars will be on a more per household base. So we're just finalizing the details, but in the coming weeks, municipalities will start to see some dollars.
Follow-up?
Yeah, okay. And none of this money seems to be earmarked for education. There's a couple of reports out today that say that it's going to cost tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to safely reopen the schools. Can the province expect a big outlay of cash when you announce the plans for reopening schools later?
Well, Randy, thanks for the question. I know Minister Lecce is going to be coming out in the next few days. He'll be rolling out a plan that he's been working on in consultation with the school boards, along with teachers, along with students and parents. And I think it's a very good plan, but he'll be coming out in the next few days on that.
Next question.
Next question comes from Paula Larigio from Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Paula.
Hi, Premier. I wanted to ask you today about childcare and daycare. The money, you've said before that you're looking to be around 90% restored to capacity at this point. However, we're hearing from industry groups that the money from municipalities for childcare has not been flowing consistently, which means that in many areas, there are lots of centers that can't afford to expand to the greater size cohort, and in some cases can't afford to reopen, possibly until the fall. So can you explain a little bit where that 90% number is coming from, and whether there's any plan to kind of ensure consistent access to childcare across the province, considering how important that is to the economic reopening?
Well, again, before I pass to Municipal Affairs, we have a solid plan moving forward. The capacity is at 91%. Today's the day that they can jump from 10 to 15 kids in the daycare centers, and we're going to continue rolling it out. In August, more daycare centers are going to be open and prepared. We're putting millions of dollars in there to support them, no matter if it's staffing or PPE, whatever they need, or cleaning folks or items that they need to keep the classrooms clean. But I'll pass it over to the Minister. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question. I've certainly had a number of conversations with Minister Lecce about ensuring that the 47 service managers have ample opportunity to both have the funds flowing and also give them enough time to be able to put plans in place. I know that parents across the province are very anxious as part of the Safe Restart Agreement as areas move through the stages to ensure that childcare is available. We're going to continue to sit down with service managers to ensure that as the dollar flows, that those particular facilities can open up both safely and to the capacity that Minister Lecce has announced in the past.
Follow-up?
Sure. Just kind of doubling up on Randy's question on education. There's supposed to be an announcement at some point this week on what the plan will be, but the deadline for school boards to present their potential plans isn't until next month, next week, I guess. So how is it possible to come up with a provincial plan if the school boards haven't all submitted their own projections?
Well, I know the Minister has been in touch with the school boards across the province. His staff has been. But every day I'm coming up here, and every day I'm getting questions, so people need answers. They want certainty at home. They want to make sure that when they go back to work in September, their kids are taken care of in a safe environment, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Our number one priority is to make sure the kids are back in the classroom and that they're in a safe environment.
Next question.
Next question comes from Matt Summer from Radio Canada. Please go ahead.
Hi, Matt.
Oh, hi, Premier. My question is on education as well. So the Liberal Party has released a plan for the start of the school year in September. It includes a lot of numbers, for instance, the number of extra teachers that will be needed in order to have classrooms no larger than 15 students. First of all, what do you think of their proposition, and how come your government still hasn't released any plan?
Well, we have a great plan that the minister's been working on, again, consulting with health, which is extremely important. Again, working with sick kids, hospital, other health experts, and we're going to be rolling out our plan in the next few days. It's a plan that's been worked on for months, and we're gonna roll it out, and I think it's a very good plan.
Follow-up.
My follow-up is for Minister Mulroney. Madame Mulroney, votre gouvernement a décidé de confier l'apprentissage en ligne à TFO, mais TFO et les conseils scolaires disent avoir un peu été pris par surprise. Pourquoi ne pas les avoir consultés, et est-ce que vous lancez un petit peu le message que les conseils scolaires francophones ne sont pas vraiment qualifiés pour gérer eux-mêmes la livraison des cours en ligne, ce qu'ils font pourtant depuis 2009?
Eh bien, l'apprentissage en ligne fait partie de la modernisation de l'éducation. En vue de l'expérience de la pandémie, c'est essentiel pour notre gouvernement de nous assurer que la qualité de l'apprentissage en ligne soit la plus haute possible. Alors, c'est pour ça que nous avons proposé ces modifications dans le mandat de TFO, qui a bien sûr des connaissances et une réputation exceptionnelle dans le domaine numérique. Et nous croyons qu'il y aura bien sûr, en ayant un partenariat entre TFO et les conseils scolaires, une possibilité d'améliorer encore l'apprentissage en ligne pour les étudiants francophones dans la province. Et il y aura certainement des consultations qui auront lieu, et ça se passe maintenant, et c'est le ministère de l'Éducation qui est en train de mener ces consultations.
Next question.
Next question comes from Christina Tanalia from CP24. Please go ahead.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, Premier. I'll start with a question for you and then for Minister Mulroney. I'm sure you've heard about this Brampton House party over the weekend. Actually, there were several, including a shooting at one. Officials, police and municipal officials say the homeowner or party organizer hired security to park cars. There was upwards of 200 people. They erected barriers above the home's backyard fence so people could not see inside. That's 200 plus people, including people hired, that are all breaking the rules. I mean, are people no longer getting the message that we're still in a pandemic? And a fine of upwards of $100,000, it seems that's not deterring people.
Well, first of all, when I heard this, and I've had a conversation with Mayor Brown in Brampton this morning, and he agrees 100%. You know, the full extent of the law needs to be thrown at these people. Throw everything in the kitchen sink at them, the 100,000, everything else, and then, you know, you really got to question people. Peel's in stage 2 still. Everyone, I visited Peel last week, met some great people, great business owners, and they're struggling. And to get into stage 3, we want to open it up more. And then you got a bunch of yahoos again that number one, hold the party, and then a whole bunch of 200 yahoos show up to hold the party. Like, guys, what? Like, man, come on. Like, what don't you get? Like, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that someone would be reckless and careless and go out and hold this party. It's staggering. Not one, not two, but 3 different parties. If you have the money to pay for security, you have the money for valet parking, you have the money to extend your fence up in the air, guess what? You have a $100,000 fine, and I'd throw everything in the book at you right now. Well, people are struggling. You got healthcare workers working around the clock to protect us. You have the police protecting, emergency services. You have everyone in the province sitting there bending over backwards, and we've got a bunch of jokers out there that think it's no problem. Go out there and hold the party. I'm gonna before I really rant, I'm gonna pass it over to the Minister of Health, because I've never seen anything like it. You think the cheese slipped off the cracker with these people? Like, they just don't get it. Like, come on, we're all in this together. I'll pass it over to the Minister of Health. Thank you.
Well, there's not much more I can add to what the Premier has already said. He said it very well. Just because we're moving forward with the economy, and I know that the people in Peel Region want to move into stage 3, both the individuals and the businesses want to, but when something like this happens, it sets everything back. And just because we're moving forward with the economy doesn't mean that we're through this pandemic. Not at all. It's even more important now because people are mixing and mingling more in business on the street, in stores and so on. To have a party of 200 people is completely irresponsible to me. We must continue to follow the physical distancing, wearing masks where that's not possible, frequent hand washing. Please, everybody, please follow these public health measures so that we can move forward with Ontario, so that we can get back to the new normal in everybody's lives. But for people to do something like this really does a disservice and I would say disrespect for the tremendous work that's being done by our frontline healthcare workers and all of the other emergency personnel. So please, everybody, continue to follow the public health rules.
Follow up?
Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Minister. Minister Mulroney, my next question is for you. So at 2 p.m., members of the Jane and Finch community are holding a news conference about the Jane and Finch Community Hub. A letter from Metrolinx CEO to local councillor Peruzza noted that a Metrolinx official committed to the idea of the hub several years ago without proper approvals. In the meantime, the community has spent years planning for this, so I'm wondering, how does something like that fall through the cracks, that somebody approved this without proper approvals, and in the meantime, the community spends years planning for it? And on that note, I know that the Metrolinx CEO noted that there is a solution to facilitate the use of land for the project. The community had expected the land to be donated, so now who pays for this?
Well, obviously, this is a project that's incredibly important to the residents of the Jane and Finch area, and so it's unfortunate, to say the least, that, as you pointed out, it wasn't formalized and it fell through the cracks. But this weekend, the Premier and I co-signed a letter to the CEO and the Chair of the Board of Metrolinx, underscoring the importance of this project and advising Metrolinx that we wanted to see that land used for the construction of the community hub because we know how important it is, and to provide options for us on paths forward. This community hub will be built. It's going to be part of the plan, and we're just waiting for options. But you're right, we will look into how this happened, but as I said, we have committed to moving forward with it.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Ashley Legasic from News Talk 1010. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier. Just for some clarification, this new funding you've announced, it mentions the federal government is chipping in as well. Does the federal contribution to this come from the $7 billion that they're sending to Ontario, or is it in addition to that?
No, it's coming from the federal government, and in total we have $19 billion. I'm going to pass this over to the Minister of Finance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So in terms of the $7 billion that is being provided to the Government of Ontario out of the overall program that the Premier's negotiated, the federal contribution, which will be the $777 million for municipal, and also the $1 billion comes from the portion that's going to Ontario.
Follow up.
Thank you. And Premier, just going off of Christina's question as well, we've heard from a lot of Ontarians who are extremely angry when they see videos of people partying in groups of dozens and being flippant about public health guidelines. A lot of people believe these groups are going to be the ones to hold us back from further reopening. So when is enough enough? When does the province go from an educational approach to an enforcement approach? Or are we going to keep scolding them and hope for the best? And at what point do we roll back the reopening?
I think when people are reckless, we have to look at enforcement. Not only should these residents or the homeowner get fined $100,000, every person that's there should be getting dinged with an $800 fine at a minimum. I just can't understand what people think some days. It's really unbelievable. We're doing so well, and then they go out there and hold these parties. You know, it's really, really disappointing. You know, maybe the media should be calling this guy's name out and calling him out, because I wouldn't want someone working at my place that just had 200 people over. They should be self-isolating. It's ridiculous. And over the 200 people that showed up, maybe you should self-isolate. Maybe you should go get tested. Matter of fact, why don't you go to your grandparents and tell them you were just at a big, huge party, having a great old time, you know, dancing and God knows with no masks, and It's just, it's really unbelievable. It's so disappointing that someone be this reckless, but not once, 3 times, and there's a shooting at the same address, I hear. Again, get it together. Like, you know, you're just doing a disservice to all the hardworking people out there in Brampton, and there's so many great people in Brampton. It's terrible. Just going back, as the Minister of Transportation mentioned about this hub at Jane and Finch, we're building it. We're building it as sure as I'm talking to you right now. And but there's a process. No matter what government piece of property there is, you've got to go through the process. And I'm not too sure the exact details, but if you know, Metrolinx puts this land forward, then the City of Toronto has to step up too and help get in along with the community and help build this.
Okay, last question.
Last question comes from Rob Ferguson from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Premier. Just to get back to this Brampton stuff for a minute. So you've delayed your decision on stage 3 until Wednesday. Anybody who was at this party on Saturday night isn't really going to probably start showing symptoms till then. Does this mean you have to hold off on a decision Wednesday? And also the numbers in Windsor-Essex are still high. So
Yeah.
What are you thinking about there?
So on 2 fronts, and I'm going to pass over to the Minister of Health. We'll start off with the Windsor. There was 40 cases in the Windsor-Essex area. I was on the phone with Matt Anderson again. They're going to make sure they're doing testing. They have the Agri Center that people can go in and get tested. They also have the mobile units that they're going right to the farms to get tested. So if you look at 2 regions, you have 40 in Essex, you have 28 in Toronto. That's more than half. You know, we had 119 cases. You take those out of the equation, we're down to 60 cases. My point is everyone's pitching in. And even not to call Toronto out, because there's 3 million people in Toronto almost, so 28 is not a terrible number, but still, we're getting down there. The numbers are going down. And that's what we have to focus on, making sure that we continue lowering the cases. As for the folks out in Brampton, Robert, like, what can we say? Like, people at home listening are thinking, you got to be kidding me. You know, you're part of the media, Robert. Name and shame this guy, because it's ridiculous. And then we need to tack him with a $100,000 fine immediately, in my opinion. I'll pass it over to the Minister of Health. Thank you.
Well, as the Premier indicated, we are still looking at 3 regions, Windsor-Essex, Peel, and Toronto. And we've seen the numbers go up and down a lot in the last week or so. That's why we do need further time to evaluate, and the medical public health professionals need that time to evaluate. So they will still be looking at the numbers right until Tuesday evening to decide what, if any, statements can be made on Wednesday. But the situation with the parties in Brampton doesn't help the situation, and that is something that I know that Dr. Williams and his team are looking at. They will be the ones that will make the final determination, because you're right, it won't show up as of Tuesday evening. It takes longer for the cases to incubate, but it is still something that needs to be taken into consideration. So thank you.
Follow up.
Yes, thank you. Back to the Premier. There are more than 6,000 eviction applications with the Landlord-Tenant Board for residential tenants, and I know you say you have Bill 184 to try to pave the way for working out repayment plans, but how can you be so sure that people aren't going to be evicted when there are so many applications before that board?
I'll pass out to Municipal Affairs. Thank you.
Thanks, Fergie, for the question. We have a lot of tools at our disposal. Obviously, Bill 184 added mediation and encouraged repayment plans between landlord and tenants. We certainly added penalties for unlawful evictions. But the other thing that I've talked to a number of municipal officials, including a call today with Mayor Tory, and also to a conversation I had with Deputy Mayor Bailau last week, is we have the $150 million that we announced for the second phase of the social service review program. That's application-based, and I'm certainly encouraging those longer-term sustainable solutions. But if, for example, to use the City of Toronto as an example, if they decided to develop a rent arrears program and wanted to partner with our provincial dollars, that would be something that we would take a look at. In addition, we were the first, I want to remind people this, we were the first Canadian province or territory that signed on to the National Housing Benefit. So this is a portable benefit that people can use to help keep themselves housed. And then the final point that I will make is in the first phase of the Social Service Review Fund, that's the $148 million we announced early on, many municipalities strengthened their rent banks, strengthened their utility banks, and also created emergency rent assistance programs. So to say that there's nothing available is incorrect. There were dollars given to municipalities that they could deal with on a flexible basis.
Thank you, everyone.